Welcome to another episode of Your Next 50. And ladies, Sylvia and I are here to tell you that it is your time. Be intentional with your choices and don't waste even one more day hiding in your stories. You can reclaim your personal power and be happy while doing it. And this podcast will show you how. Well, welcome everybody. Here we are, Sylvia, another great conversation coming up.
Oh, we do. Every week is a great conversation.
We
Can't
do.
wait for this one. Got me thinking back in the past.
Yeah. So
Back in the
which
past.
past, which boss? So you know that famous expression, people don't leave jobs, they leave leaders. So tell me,
Isn't
right?
that true? When you think back and think back to a time where you had a boss or a job that you left. Was it really about what you were doing
Mm,
or the hours or the pay? Or was it about your boss? Me,
yeah.
it's always probably been about my bosses, Jenny. Oh,
Well,
geez.
it always comes down to people stuff, which is why we're both in the
Mm,
coaching business, right?
yeah.
You can have a fantastically high performing executive, but if they can't get along or play nice in the sandbox, nobody wants to have them around. So maybe this is the very first kernel of feedback before we even hop into a story, because we both have one. We love our stories and sharing through stories. Is this idea of, and this was given to me by a wise woman I knew, and she said, remember people, process, and product.
Product.
Thank you, Sylvia. People, process, and product. It's
Mhm.
2 out of 3 doesn't work. So if you get a fantastic product and your process is great and people are pissed off, it doesn't work. If the people are happy and you get a great product, but the process was terrible, that still doesn't work. So you do need a 3 out of 3 for that. And we're going to talk more about in this episode, but let's start with a story.
Well, even before getting to the story, Jenny, can we define what, when we talk
Mm,
about boss? Because if you're running your own business and you're saying, well, hey, I don't have my own boss. Well,
mm,
no, that's not true. As entrepreneurs and coaches, we have our bosses and they are our clients.
that's right.
So if you've never had a job, and I was thinking, Jenny, you've never perhaps had a corporate job, but you've had other jobs. But it's
Well,
rare that people haven't had jobs. I
it's
think
very
Gen X
rare.
people anyway.
Well, I just remember, can you imagine a worser fit than Jenny Mitchell in an accounting department at a huge financial institution? Just leave that there to float in front of you, Sylvia.
Yeah. So if, the term boss, take it to mean what it means in your own business, if
Yeah,
that's a client, or if you perhaps volunteer in an organization, well, you've got the board of directors. They are your bosses. It might not be a paid position,
yeah.
but it is still an up level. And that's what we're talking about today is those people that are above you, the decision makers,
Mhm,
perhaps in your organization. Well, that is what we're talking about today. So
mhm.
story time, Jenny.
Story time. Okay, so story time was I was a young executive or young fundraising consultant at the time, pretty green behind the ears, and I was having a really difficult time with the people part of a client. And the profile of the CEO was a very lovely man, but quiet, man of very few words, always the hardest for me, the sort of outgoing yellow personality, full of ideas. And some way, halfway through the contract, I realized that I seriously needed feedback. And this is kind of one of the built-in components or pillars of this conversation is managing up starts with asking really pointed questions, seeking feedback on what the person above you needs. And so I wasn't getting that from this role. And so I decided that I was going to create a one pager that was going to have a bunch of statement questions like Jenny clearly articulates progress in the fundraising file. Jenny works collaboratively with the other programming people. Jenny provides reports in a way that are helpful to me as the CEO. So I had these statements and I had a yes, no, and a maybe, or like a needs work. And at the end of a session, at the end of a conference or conversation we were having, I said, I'd love some feedback from you on this. And I remember pushing it over to his table and he was stunned. He was like, you want me to answer this now? And I realized in that moment, Sylvia, I was taking this on as a me problem that I didn't know. in that moment, I realized he was actually incapable and terribly uncomfortable with providing
Mhm.
qualitative and quantitative feedback. And was so prepared and I was so ready for this and, shiny. This is the way I'm going to try this. But it was a great moment. If I hadn't done that, Sylvia, if I hadn't managed up to my client, to my boss, these can be scary conversations. I can think of a time working with an interior designer and saying, how is this feeling for you? Because I knew I wasn't happy about something. But always when we lean into those conversations about feedback and how people perceive things going, we learn and we can adapt and adjust.
That's a great story. That's a great story. And what does it mean when we're talking about managing up, right? How to turn
Mm.
your boss into your best boss ever? Well, a lot of it is figuring out what makes your boss tick. And, that goes through communication styles. How do they want feedback?
Yeah.
How do they work? What's going to make your whole team look great? And how do you make your boss look great? That's understanding. If you don't know what that is
Yeah.
going into a project, well, both of you are going to be going on parallel roads, getting to the end of a project, and you might think it went so good and this is what happened. And they're going to say, oh, but this was the worst thing ever.
Wow.
Right. So that communication piece.
I love the idea of the parallel tracks, right? You're thinking one thing, they're thinking another, and we haven't taken I think that's what happens when you get into a task-based activity in the shop, right? It's things instead of setting intentions, setting a vision. One of my favorite questions is, what does success look like for you? You use that in your coaching, I'm sure. That's one of the first things you
Mhm.
always are level
Yeah.
setting with clients, right? If we work together for 6 months, where do you want to be? What's your vision of success? Taking the time, this is a bit of quota setting, expectation setting, and agreed managing up, Sylvia.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember, and I'm putting myself in the other seat as the leader or as a middle manager and having staff. There are staff members that you have an affinity with and some perhaps that you don't. And it might not always just be personality. And
Mm,
I'm realizing now as I was reflecting on this, it might have been, I might have felt more comfortable with that employee who
mm,
took the time to ask me those important questions. Well, what do you want on this file, Sylvia? How
mm,
can I perform this? How should I email it to you? Should I text it to you? Like, and
mhm,
then the other one who just ignores you perhaps and goes off on their own way and does their job perhaps without asking me questions.
mhm.
So there is, how do you get into the mind of your boss?
Mm,
Yeah.
right. And
Because I think,
yeah,
for me, sorry, going back, that I've had really good employees, and now I'm thinking, well, maybe they weren't so bad after all, but there was, I take responsibility as
sure.
well. This isn't
Yeah.
about fixing bad managers. We've all perhaps had those bad managers. This is about really, as a team, as myself as an employee, how do I, do my
Mm.
job really, really well to make the team look well, to make our boss look good.
And I think that is part of our job. I'm not talking about hiding things our bosses are doing, but helping or supporting our boss. Another story that comes to mind was, those sometimes those little things. I had a client that was telling me how she was holding up that fort and didn't have the admin help she needed and all this stuff. And she'd had a difficult employee before who she'd let go. And she said when the new hire came in, it was the simple gesture of getting her a cup of tea before her first meeting, and she could have cried because someone was supporting her, or she noticed, that
Mm.
employee noticed something to support her. So these are real meaningful things, right? We're not talking about, when we talk about managing up, there is, to me at least, there is nothing negative about managing up. In other words, this is with the pursuit of bringing out the best in your boss, but also in yourself. There's no manipulation to me in it. It's
Yeah, because
about,
it could be
yeah,
interpreted as sucking up, right? Oh, you're just
yeah,
sucking up to the boss. And I don't think it's that at all. I don't think it's that, because the clearer we are with our expectations that others have of us and that
yeah,
we have of ourselves and of others, the clearer we are, the more successful we'll all be.
yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
a no-brainer in the app, but communication is, I think, is the hardest thing in teams. You've got people around that table. We've done shows, the conversations around the table, getting everyone to speak. Why is this difficult?
Mm. Well, we're so different, all of us, right? Like I can think of
Mm,
managers that I had, bosses that I had that much preferred a written report, wanted to see things in advance, did not want to get caught out having to put an opinion on a table at the spur of the moment.
Yeah.
Right? And I have to respect that of them. That's not my style. Surprise, surprise. I am more of the idea generator and let's go with it. And I really sort of feel my energy in my gut when those things happen. And yeah, it is challenging. I'm not a report writer, Sylvia, but I respect the different people in my office, the different client styles I have, because many people want to have the information in advance and want written reports, not verbal reports. Key points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some people it's that, if time, I think reports they can read it on their own time rather than booking a meeting. We have so many meetings and
Oh
then
my
in the
God.
meetings we get distracted by, stories. Some employees are chatterboxes,
Yeah.
and then you just get detracted from all of your, the schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, what else do we have here?
Well, I think the other thing this is really about, it's a bit of a slow down to hurry up, is going after the information you need in advance rather than along the way. So
Mm,
troubleshooting at the beginning, level setting, I think specificity as much as you can in a lot of our worlds, our target is this many X's, this many Y's. It's going to be an event of this size. These are the kind of cultivation, or my world, or these are some of the strategic goals that I have for this committee that I'm working with. What's your feedback on that? Do those seem aligned with what you're seeing at the senior leadership table or whatever, what the board's looking for? And I really love that question of, and how would you describe success for this program or for this event? Yeah.
And I think that's across the board, that
Yep.
question. And like you said at the beginning, I ask that of my clients, you ask that of your clients, because if we're, success is so broad. Is it in my coaching business? Is it you want to, is it make $1 million this year? Or is it you'd like to develop a program in the next 6 months? Like
Yep.
what, how will we define that?
Yep.
And I think asking that of our leaders
Mm-hmm.
is probing we just get more clear
Mm-hmm.
on what is expected, and they might not even know.
Yep.
And I think that's where bringing that question, it makes
Yep.
them reflect, really, oh, it's true, what are we after here? What am I after?
Mm-hmm.
What are their bosses after?
So I can't help but jump in with a coach approach, right? So in my training, I learned a lot about coach approach in a work environment. And what a coach approach is the idea that together we co-create solutions, we collaborate on solutions. It's not, nobody holds the final say in a hierarchical, but we support and develop in this case, I guess we're managing down, but managing down to our employees of, well, what's going to be most important? What obstacles might you uncover, right? Which is so different than a boss saying, do this, do that, then do this, and then report back to me. And that works the other way. If you're managing up to a board, you can't tell them that they're wrong. You can't tell them that's a stupid idea. That does not make them look good, right?
No.
Or a client for that matter, right? But you can ask those coach approach questions, things like, how do you think this would affect your brand in the marketplace? What concerns might you have about this particular kind of strategy? Or what things might we not have thought about?
Those are
Coach
great
approach.
questions. Those are great questions. Right? And a lot of, I think there's companies are so busy.
Mm.
Organizations are so busy. We're off. I remember just, when I was working in corporate, is one thing after the next, one thing after the next. And we keep just doing the same thing, perhaps, different projects, but in the same way
Ugh.
without thinking. We look at the results, you get tapped on, your hands might get tapped on because you didn't get the results you wanted, but do we take the time to really see and dig in? So I love those questions.
Yeah. As I get
Yeah.
older, and I think the challenge between moving from a manager to a leader, we're really just talking about those up leveling. That's what we talk about all the time, Sylvia. Up leveling,
Right.
right?
Right.
Up leveling our personalities, up leveling our approach, our professionalism, and going from a manager to a leader is really unique because a manager manages files, and a leader carves and casts a vision. And I think that transition can be challenging. And that's where I think talking about the future, envisioning the future, articulating what success looks like. I see 6
Mm.
more employees. I see that we've got a file for corporate social responsibility. I'm making this up, but like, and these kinds of things, and that we're thriving, and then there's new expansion in this particular portfolio because of this kind of development. And then, of course, if I was working for that visionary, I'd say, what metrics are most important to you? How will you know we've succeeded? Just notice all my open-ended questions.
Mhm, mhm. I love that, that visionary, yes, and
Mm,
how many leaders do not? I mean, if you're a
mm,
great leader, you do share that vision, but I've been in situations not knowing where we were going, where we were headed, and feeling I'm doing this blindly, I'm doing my best, but it doesn't align. So I think it comes down again, communication.
yes,
Communication top to top down and then, and then bottom up. It's really that back and forth
it is.
of, yeah, back and forth with those questions. Even as a boss, how do you see this? Okay, this is my vision. I'm not going to give you the how, but I'm going to give you, what do you think about this? How do
Yeah.
you think in your expertise how we're going to get there? Ah, well, I see it this way. Does that align with you? Oh, yes, it does. I love that. Mm.
This is a great conversation. I hope that if you're listening, you're thinking about your boss and what you could do differently or in it with a new lens. I think these are really powerful conversations. Maybe we can talk about this other quote that I have that I love, which is basically, I get really interested in the things that my boss gets interested in. And
Mm.
that's sort of a good reminder of where your boss's interests are most likely where they would like you to focus your interests. I'm not saying you
Like
give up.
golf? You
Yeah,
like they like golf, Jenny? Is that what you're saying? I gotta go play golf now? I mean, but that
pet
we
projects, come
laugh
on.
about we laugh
Yeah,
about that one, but
yeah,
that's a true tangible thing, the golf course.
absolutely.
How many big, huge multi-million dollar projects are formed on the golf course?
Well, we're changing that, and the world is changing, and we're finding new ways, and maybe we're gonna close deals at the ballet now. Maybe that's it. All the new.
Why not? Why not?
So what makes a great boss? I think what are your must-haves, Sylvia? That's a good question.
Oh, that is so good. It is that, as an employee, I always liked, having independence,
Yes.
but again, having that clear vision,
Mhm.
but allowing me to do it my way and then bringing it back, um, so that clarity for me,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
clarity, and someone who's very, on the I did like, I say nice, but nice is not that's too broad of a word, I think, but that is human, that sees you as a person
Yeah.
and not just a number and not just someone that is, under their eyes, being
I
watched.
do.
I never like to be watched. Really that independence for me.
Well, we know that people autonomy is one of the most important factors for job satisfaction. So if we can build the scaffolding and then that the employees fill in those gaps, our community tends to be those of you that listen to Your Next 50 are such a compassionate, caring group
Mm.
of people. One of the things we talk a lot about is leadership with compassion. And so if you're listening, how could you, if you're the boss, how could you show your human side, I think is what Sylvia is speaking to, and
Mm.
that connection to build strength in those relationships. We're not just taskmaster machines that spit out events and spit out widgets for your company or whatever it is. So let's move now. Shit happens. We have a problem, right?
Yes.
And how do we, I am going to share some open ended questions about understanding conflict. So something bad goes down. I think in my past life, I'm going to own, I used to just go run away under a rock or build my defenses, right? Protect, protect, protect. But I'm different now, and I'm growing, and I'm older, and I'm wiser, and I'm learning. And so sometimes creating a space for that conflict conversation, from your perspective, what happened? How did you feel about what happened? Why do you believe you're right? That's quite a powerful. We don't usually in coaching use the word why because it sets up a controversy already, but what parts of this do you hold true so that you can each hold your truth and then decide to move forward mutually on a path. I think there's a space for holding your truth and saying what you mean and what you feel, even if it's difficult.
You know what's coming up for me is I'm like, my first thing is like, gosh, I have never had a leader ask me any of those questions, Jenny. And there have been conflicts before.
So why didn't they ask them? That's a
Yes,
great.
it's true. I think this is this a new way of leading? Is this a different, a special type of person who, not everybody is into these questions? And I do think this is why good teams versus teams that don't work as well. It's that leadership piece.
Well, I'm just thinking, you spend so much time in these jobs, you guys that are listening. Why
Mm,
can't we make them be rich and fruitful? I think we're still so afraid of conflict. I think that it actually
yeah,
comes down to that. Maybe they didn't
yeah.
even tell you they didn't like it. Maybe they didn't take the time to think about why they didn't like it. I mean, the reflection piece is something else we need to pick up on. You talked
Mm.
about, you do an event or you do a thing or you do a big campaign or a marketing plan, and there's no space for reflection. We finish it and we go on to the
Yeah,
next
you go
thing.
right on to the next thing. And what I'm thinking as well is that, okay, if I do not, or if you're listening and you're saying, oh gosh, yeah, no, no one's ever asked me those questions. My leader, the leadership in my place of work is not the best. Then I think, well, how can I act? I can control myself. So perhaps modeling, right? Taking those questions and actually bringing, as we're talking, bringing them up, asking my boss these questions or the board members, and not worrying about the conflict, having those courageous conversations, but modeling that behavior and that reflection piece.
A lot of this comes down, that's so true. I just think that's fantastic, and that I love the part about that you have choice, because you always have
Mm,
choice. And modeling those behaviors and seeking those questions, and also it'll get you faster to knowing if it's the right place or not the right place for you, let's be
right.
honest,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Mm,
So those some of those open-ended questions, how do you define success? If from my perspective something's gone wrong, how would you like to hear about it? What are your expectations of this role, of this position, of this program? I think those are fantastic questions. And maybe those of you that are listening, you're scribbling like mad. We should put these into like the show notes or something, Sylvia. We
yeah,
come up with this
we'll do
just for
that.
like, all of them basically are open-ended. What that means is that the answer is not yes or no. The answer is to prompt discussion. And maybe even if you're feeling really uncomfortable about this, can you put up a bracket at the beginning of, I'd like to explore some content or some subjects with you, Mr. or Mrs. Boss. Can we create a space here to have an open dialogue? I mean, imagine if somebody came to you with that. First of all, you'd be like, what's up? Of course.
Yeah, what's going on?
Right? What's going on? Are you leaving? It's probably what I was thinking. For that
Yeah.
matter, conversations to make people stay, conversations to have people stay. We know that top talent is so hard to maintain in our world, whether you're in the corporate world or whatever, an entrepreneurial world. So why not be proactive with these
Mm.
conversations, so that you can get a sense of what people's motivations are? I think we think too much about people's tasks and people's roles
Yeah,
and
it's
people's
always
job
about tasks.
descriptions.
It's, you
I
didn't do
know.
this, you didn't do this, this didn't
Yep.
get done, this didn't get, I didn't like the way and I'm like, but there's so much more to a person than that. Yes. What a great conversation,
Yeah,
Jenny.
totally.
Hmm.
So love to hear your thoughts. If you're listening along going, I have this great boss or I have this terrible boss, or, maybe it prompts you to go and talk to your boss to tell them how great you think they are. So that idea of the final message here is that you have control. There are pieces of this that you can control. You can't control your boss, but you can control all the steps that you build into managing up your boss. The other idea we had was being aware of that victimhood. How often do we go out with our girlfriends and somebody starts complaining about their boss, but there's no element of solution, no element of
Right.
how to
Yeah.
change the dance?
It's just woe is me, right? While there are, again, it comes down to choice. What am I going to do in this situation? Do I
Yeah,
leave? Right?
yeah.
I've had that. I stayed in jobs before and like I knew I wasn't that happy, but did I ask those right questions? I don't think I did. Like I think
And
nowadays with the experience that I have, I would approach I would approach those situations differently, or at least I would hope so.
Well, and I think the whole message here on this podcast is really trying things, right? It's about
Mm.
exploring and trying things and seeing where it lands. And there, it's not too late. That's sort of our
Well, I was just
taglines. Yeah,
thinking of our episode that our discussion with Jen Marples about it's not effing too late.
yeah,
And it isn't. So if there's any sense of frustration, I think if you do have a challenging,
yeah,
I think there are some people though that you'll never get
yeah.
to. There's just they are. And
Mhm,
I think, then we look at other aspects of our job that we like and where we do have more control or that
mhm,
independence. And then
mhm.
comes down to choice though. Do we
Yep.
decide to leave? Do we decide to change departments? Who else can we talk to about this person? Where can we
Mhm.
get the help? What are those questions? Right?
Speaking
And
up and using
mm,
your voice, Sylvia,
exactly,
right?
exactly.
We don't plan this stuff. It just magically happens. I'm just
Magically
kidding. But
happen.
there's so many themes here that feel really good about
Mm.
this episode. And for those of you that are listening, send us a note. Let us know if you're enjoying this. Let us know whether this is resonating with you or how you solved something. Wouldn't it be great to hear from a subscriber that said, based on your feedback on your podcast, I was able to do X. Send us those emails, please. I'd love
We
to
do
hear from
like
you.
to hear them.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening, everybody. That's it for today.
Mhm.
What a
Yeah.
great conversation. Go
So
forward in your day, ask the open-ended questions, make your boss look great. You'll look good as well. So will your
that's right.
team.
Absolutely.
Next week, we have
Yes,
an episode.
we do. So we are going to be talking about living in lack
Mm.
versus living in abundance. Ooh, this is a
Oh,
good one.
living in lack versus living in abundance. Mindset, right?
Yeah,
It's going to be a big
yeah,
mindset episode. And right away, I'm thinking, oh, it's probably a money episode. It could be
probably.
so many things.
Well, it could be like also what you think you're worthy of.
All
All
tied
tied
together.
together, all tied to goals, all tied to visioning. So, as always, a great conversation. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Let us know. We really appreciate your 5-star reviews. I know it
We
sounds
do.
boring for us to keep saying it to you, but every
Well,
time
we
we get one, we get
do. We
very
do.
excited.
That our goal is to bring this message to as many people as possible. So if you are listening that and friends, how do you say the birds that what birds that fly together flock? What's that expression?
Birds of a
Birds
feather flock
flock
together.
together. There we go. So you will have another amazing women around you that would benefit from these conversations. So
Um,
please share them. Please go give us a review. We really, really appreciate it.
yeah. So you can send this episode to the gal that's been squawking. I'm using the bird analogy at
Yeah,
your
there you
girls'
go.
night about her boss and not doing anything about it. Just saying.
Just saying.
Oopsie.
Well,
Yeah.
on that note, have a great week and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah.
Bye.